Hello everybody, E here. Today we are talking about my favorite horror novels not written by Stephen King. There is a novella in here, but other than that, all the rest of them are novels. You guys might be surprised that there are not traditional horror novels in here. You're not going to find any Richard Lehman, any John Saul, any of the paperback kings of like the 80s. None of those. What I find horrific is a mounting sense of dread, and I like subtext. I don't like, basically, all gore is in a book is the equivalent of a jump scare in a movie. That's all it is. It's just a visual. There's nothing that bothers me about blood and guts and whatever strewn everywhere. The only time character death affects me is when it's like a baby or a child. Then that'll upset me. Anywho, so jumping right into the list, my favorite horror novels not written by Stephen King. First off, we have the pilot. Oh, there's some. What just fell out of there? Hang on, just a second. Y'all, what did we find? Oh, that is weird. Okay, so weird. Y'all, I found some. Okay, well, I'll look that over later. I don't know what that is. Let's see if there's any more in here. No, I don't think so. Anyways, I have not read this version. After reading the ebook, I ordered this and I hadn't opened it. Okay. Anyways, surprise, surprise. Welcome to the Discovery Channel. My Benny. Anyways, so Pile Family Circus. Love this book. And I don't think there's anything about this book that I did not appreciate. The clowns, the alternate reality, the main character, everything. I have not. There's a follow-up. There's a sequel. I have not read it. I haven't, for some odd reason, I just haven't picked it up. I will get to it eventually, and I'll let you guys know what I think of when I get there. Next up, we have a book that several of my friends don't like. Horror fans in general don't seem to care much for it, and that is The Ruins by Scott Smith. I was disturbed throughout this entire book. The characters, of course, are buttheads. I don't want to get demonetized, but you know what I'm trying to say. They're terrible people, and I enjoyed. Was it Schadenfreude or whatever it's called? I forget what it's called when you enjoy seeing somebody get their comeuppance. But that's what this book did for me. I enjoyed watching these crap people get just torn apart and eaten up by these vines. It has one of the coolest sequences in it, and that's probably the only good part of the movie version of this. Has to do with a cell phone. If you know what I'm talking about, there you go. Next up is a relatively new addition to this list, which is The Grip of It. Fantastic horror novel. And I would put it on any top horror list. It's easily in my top. It's the top 8, I guess, of non-King horror. This book, still to this day, I still think about this book, and I will probably reread it within a year's time of reading it the first time because it was that good. Next up, we'll have one we talked about recently, Kin by Keelan Patrick Burke. Fantastic. It's in my top 20 books of all time. That's what I was getting at with this one. It's in my top 20. Even that list that I have includes non-horror stuff, but this is in my top 20 of all time, period. Along with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, along with It, along with Nosferatu, and several others. Slaughterhouse 5. So Keelan Patrick Burke. If you have not read this, or this author, period, go out and get something by him. You won't be disappointed. Next up, The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaBelle, whichever, I'm not sure. LaBelle, I'll call him LaBelle, whatever. We'll bounce back and forth. I've liked everything that he has done, but he is one of those authors who has definitely gotten better as he's gone along. This is my second favorite from him, but I couldn't put the other one on this list because I don't really consider it horror. That's The Devil in Silver is my favorite book by him. But my favorite horror novel from him is definitely The Ballad of Black Tom. Next up, these next three are when somebody asks me, hey, you love Stephen King. Well, what's some good horror authors? What are good horror books that you can suggest that I can read that's not by Stephen King? I always return to these three books. Two of them are fan favorites. I mean, people are going to love them. One of them is kind of on the fence. The first one is, of course, Ghost Story by Peter Straub. Supposedly, Stephen King read this and called Peter Straub up and said, do you want to work with me? And that's how we got the Talisman and Black House. If I'm honest, this is probably the best of Peter Straub's work, and I don't think he's done any better. I don't think he ever will do any better. I don't care too much for him other than this book. I did like Shadowlands, but other than that, I've given most of his stuff 2 to 3 stars. I'm just not a fan of the way he writes. He's far too vague for me. I love subtext, but way too vague. But this one, terrific. Great book. Next is a tie. This list hasn't really been numbered at all, but next is a tie for my favorite non-Stephen King horror book. So I'm going to jump into The Terror by Dan Simmons. This book is amazing. Dan Simmons, when he tackles nonfiction, when he fictionalizes nonfiction, is when he is at his best. Drood is amazing. That's a story of Wilkie Collins and Charles Dickens and all that. And the story behind the book that Dickens was writing when he died. But this one is about the ship, the Terror, that gets caught in the Arctic. It's 1845 Franklin expedition to the Arctic Circle. The book's 900 some odd pages. It feels like it's about 300 or 400 pages. It's amazing. From start to finish, I was never bored. It's one of those huge books that I recommend everyone read. It is fantastic, and the horror elements will truly unsettle you. Next is going to be controversial because most people do not consider this author a horror author, nor do they consider this book horror, but I do because it disturbed the hell out of me. One of my favorite books of all time, Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This book, there is a scene on a bridge with something, there is an image on a bridge that has stayed with me ever since I read this. I bought this as an impulse buy at Books A Million in hardcover. As paperback, I have my hardcover inside, but I devoured it over the course of a week, and as soon as I finished it, I wanted to pick it up. I want to start reading it again right now as I'm talking about it. This author is fantastic, especially with subtext. Now, the writing isn't, it's a noir story, but it's a little more than maybe like your Philip Marlowe or your Deschain, any of those people. Dashiell Hammett, not Deschain, sorry, Dashiell Hammett, those authors. It's a little bit more than a pulpy noir fiction writer type of book, but it does have that same feel. And some of the lore in here about the stories and the books from Stanislaus, whatever his name, Stanislaus Cordova is the director. Anyway, this book is fantastic. If you have not read it, I highly recommend you do. And I think we've been here long enough. So, I'm going to go through these and figure out what they are, and I'll let you guys know in the next video what I found out about them. And until next time, I've been E, you've been you. This has been my favorite non-Stephen King horror. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!